Introduce myself and tell you guys I think most people that are on here know who I am. My name is Kendra Aris, and I am the owner of U Conferences. So we are a women's conference that's supposed to be happening in 2 days, but due to obvious reasons with COVID-19, we've been shut down for the time being. So to get people kind of through this time and to continue to put together lots of value and information, Alyx had offered to do a mini version of her workshop for U Conferences for us for free. So I met Alyx at a conference a couple of years ago, or a year ago, I guess exactly, where she came as a coach and as an attendee, and we got to talking and learning about what she's doing, and we've stayed in touch ever since, and I've been absolutely impressed with what she's up to. So she teaches women how to organize their lives and how to get and how to plan out their business or their work schedules based off of their cycle, which sounds like something we should have all been doing a long time ago. I'm not really sure why this information is new, but not only has she done that through her, she's got a planner that will help you do that, because you're going to learn a lot today, but then applying what you learn, you can do that through a planner. She's also in the development of an app, has plans to work with teens, but really wants to impact the world and everyone across the globe on making sure that they're educated with their cycles and have the things that they need. We think about things in other countries and in developing countries, they may not have all of those things. So it's really cool. Her mission is huge and big and bright, and what you learn today will be helpful moving forward. So I'm going to pin her video now and let her take over this this chat. So thanks for coming, Alyx, and let's hear what you got to share.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I'm super duper excited. First of all, to Kendra, she just does fantastic work for women, always looking for how to support women in business in her community. So I was so excited about the U Conferences, and I'm glad that we're finding ways to make it work, even though times are a little bit different than what we anticipated. So I really love that commitment to how do we continue to make things work for people? How do we continue to support people, even if it looks a little bit different than we initially expected? And I also just wanted to do high level. There's going to be time for questions at the end, but if there's something that pops up into your mind and you're like, oh my gosh, I don't want to forget that, I really want Alyx to talk about that, feel free to drop it into the chat box, and I'll either answer it on the spot or we can definitely come back to it at the end. So that'll be a great place to answer any questions that you guys have. So I'm going to go ahead and start sharing my screen, because I'm a visual learner and I like to offer different ways for people to engage with the material. So it kind of makes it easier, I think, sometimes to pay attention if we've got something to look at as well. Because this is a little bit of crazy information. And like Kendra mentioned, this is stuff we really should have been receiving in school, and it's not yet a part of the curriculum. So hopefully someday we can help inform those policy decisions as well. So today we're really going to talk about being a cycle savvy business owner. And this applies, I know we have business owner in the title, but this really applies even if you don't have a small business, because orienting ourselves around the cycle that we have as women is really important for anything in our lives. So if you don't feel like you're a business owner, don't worry, this still definitely applies to you. Let me just figure out my controls here and see how I can move this little guy. Awesome. So today's discussion, what we're going to look at high level is how to use the 4 phases of your menstrual cycle to impact business growth and revenue, or just to help with that overall productivity and feeling of ease and calm in your life. So we're going to break down the 4 phases of the menstrual cycle, kind of give a reintroduction, again, some of that information that you should have had years ago, really show and highlight the talent and skill set of each phase of the cycle, and then show where can we add in self-care to support you when tasks feel out of alignment. So in typical life, we may not be able to change our schedule to really perfectly match up with our menstrual cycle. You may have some more flexibility right now if you're working from home, but we will definitely go over how you can make that work for you if you are not able to change every piece of your schedule. So a little bit about who I am. I am Alyx Kohlfricks. I am a holistic health and period coach. And I work with women one-on-one and in groups to help them up-level each area of their life and really use their period and their menstrual cycle to empower and inform their decision-making. And so you may be kind of curious, you may not have heard of a period coach before, you may be thinking like, how did you start to do this work, or why this specific topic? Because it's a little interesting, or maybe a little strange for you if you're hearing this for the first time. So in 2018, I began my own health coaching practice, and it was my first time starting a small business. And any small business owners who are here, if you want to put in the chat, how was that for you when you were starting your small business? What were some of the struggles, or what came up for you when you were starting your first entrepreneurial ventures? Because for me, I came with a business background. I had a business degree from Wartburg, but it was still really complicated for me to try to figure out what I do, when, where do these pieces fit together? When should I be focusing on what for my business? What makes the most sense? I really did not understand how to answer all of those questions for myself. And so a mentor of mine recommended that I started to track my sales conversations and track whether or not they said yes or no. So really being able to track what my conversion rate was. And when I looked at that, what I saw was that I had higher sales when I was in the ovulation phase of my cycle. So this is around the time where we're fertile, where we can get pregnant. And I was not attempting to get pregnant, but I saw a very clear correlation between the amount of sales that I was making increasing during this time of my cycle. And it also felt easy to have those sales conversations. I started selling coaching packages that seemed expensive for where I lived in rural Iowa, and it was a little bit nerve-wracking at times to talk about this, but it felt easier to talk about it during that phase of my cycle. And when I saw that data point come out, I was very, very curious as to what else might feel easier depending on where I put it in my cycle. So I started to just take notes and pay attention. I found that my taxes and accounting felt easier during the luteal phase, or the pre-menstrual part of my cycle, right before you get your period. I felt like it was easier to be creative or be internal in my thinking during the menstruation phase. And I started to notice these patterns, like when it felt easier to do something versus when that same exact task would feel more challenging. So I wanted to have a planner that would show me how to do it. I wanted something that would just take the guesswork out of it and give me a framework and tell me when to plan what for maximum impact. And when I looked for a tool like that, it did not exist. So I decided I would make it. So in 2019, I asked Sunny Sink, who's my co-founder, to start working on this project with me. And we went into a really crazy world of product development and starting this new company that sounded really strange because most of the people I know don't like talking about periods. And so we decided that this venture would be worth it and worth giving it a try. And when I went down the rabbit hole, I found all of these other intersections and ways that menstruation is connected to all of these different parts and pieces of our life. So it has been a wild 10 months, and it has been really worth it all the time. I just wanted to check in with a chat of those comments on how it felt to be a first-time business owner. Kind of too busy and being bored, risk is scary, and the nonprofit, like that time management, the learning curve. Yeah, all of those things I really resonated with when I was starting my business. So I'm curious, how do you guys feel when you think about your period? What is your gut reaction? What is the first thing that comes up for you when you think about periods? If anyone feels brave to share, they can unmute themselves. If not, you can definitely toss it in the chat. But I'm just curious. I'd love to start like with here, like what is our come from and how we kind of been conditioned to think about this. So Kendra said a big no, which I think is hilarious and really sums up how we're really conditioned to think about periods. Something that should be avoided at all costs, something that we shouldn't talk about, something that is maybe even considered inappropriate to talk about, even though over half of the global population will spend on average 8 years of their life menstruating. And so it's really crazy when we take a step back from that phase, Kendra. Yes, eight years on average menstruating. And 100% of your reproductive years somewhere within the cycle. So the period is only one part of this 4-phased cycle. So you spend 100% of your reproductive years somewhere within it, and 8 years of that time statistically in the menstruation part. And so for this to be something that's so integral to our lives, it's really crazy that we don't have systems and structures in place to talk about it. And we look at the way that our entire world is oriented, we're really oriented around a male's 24-hour clock. So men, testosterone, their peaks and valleys are pretty similar day in and day out over a 24-hour period. For people who are naturally cycling, that is a 28 to 35 day shift in rotation where we've got all these different sex hormones at play. And so it's a little unjust when we consider that the world is set up and oriented around a way that really only benefits half of us. Oh, if more men menstruated, there would be more understanding. Definitely. And honestly, we would probably have different expectations of what was appropriate or what kind of support was in place if men were dealing with this issue as well. And so it's a really interesting, this business has come at this intersection of advocacy, justice, fairness, equity, empowerment, and it's touching on all of these different things that I didn't really anticipate when we started the agenda period. Awesome. So let's dive in with a little bit of a reintroduction to our menstrual cycle. So this is just kind of patterned over what a 28-day cycle would look like. This is the average, but of course, if it's a little shorter or a little longer, there's nothing wrong with that. So when we start out, we actually start day one of the new cycle is our the menstrual part. This is when the bleed actually happens. I spent my entire life on birth control pills. Well, not my entire life, but most of my life on birth control pills. So I always thought that my period was at the end of the cycle, which was really interesting, but it's really the beginning of a new cycle. So the menstrual part will last anywhere between 1 to 7 days. Then we've got the follicular phase about day 7 to the ovulation phase, which the egg is only viable for 1 day, but it's got some time on either end where we may have some fertile quality mucus, which could make a pregnancy possible. And then we go into the luteal phase, which could be also known as the PMS phase. And it is actually the longest phase of the cycle, which is interesting because this is one of the most challenging phases for most of our clients. And it's the part where we spend the longest amount of time. So it's really interesting, like how can we start to see the benefit of each and every phase, because they all have these different gifts and skills when we start to really drill into it. So yeah, again, each phase of the cycle has different skill sets, and when we take advantage of them, it really changes everything. So instead of saying, oh, I don't like myself when I'm on my period, oh, I hate when I have PMS, I feel so crabby, when we start to really look for what are the gifts and the skill sets of each and every phase, we start to feel more in alignment with our entire lives. And that is what we've seen for the people using the agenda period, is just that permission and freedom to like themselves no matter what phase they're in. And that has been really cool to witness for people. When we when we look at a high level, we really are seeing that our cycle provides this perfect cycle of creation for us. We get into these modes, especially as small business owners, thinking that we've got to do everything all the time, but it isn't really the most beneficial way, and it's not even the way that most projects work. When you have a new idea, if you just jump straight into doing it without taking any time to plan it, or you analyze it, what could go wrong before it's even happened, it doesn't really make sense to do it out of order. And so what's really cool about this cycle is that it actually follows along with a really easy cycle of creation. And I want to kind of point to two here is that we have the moon phases, and we talk about the moon phases a lot because if you are non-cycling right now, whether you are postmenopausal, whether you have an IUD or birth control or are pregnant or hysterectomy, whatever the case may be, you can follow along with the phases of the moon because the moon phases really mimic our natural phases. So it's really, really exciting to see that there is still a way for you to use this information and for it to feel really beneficial for your life. So when we look at the menstruation or the new moon part, it is a great time for planning and visioning. We tend to have our lower energy here, and so really being able to sit with yourself and do that planning work for your business to so think, what launches do I have coming up? What do I want to be exploring next for myself? You know, this is a great opportunity to really sit and do some of that work. Next is the action phase. So after you've created a great plan, you're going to want to go do those steps, start to do some of that implementation work. So that is perfectly provided by the energy of the follicular phase that also lines up with the waxing moon. Then the manifestation time is really during ovulation or full moon. So again, great time for getting what you want. Just as I was noticing with my own business that I had higher sales, well, it was because I was in that ovulation time. You're harder to say no to during the ovulation phase or around the full moon. It'll be easier to articulate what you want and what you need, and people just find you more attractive, not even in a weird way, but just like, oh yeah, I really like what she's saying. Like, I got to try that out. So it's a great time to ask for what you want and then actually receive it. And then during the luteal phase, which is with the waning moon, it is a great time to analyze. It's a great time to sit back and to say, what went well? What would I like to go differently next time? And how can I really plan my next project for my maximum benefit? And when we look at, we're working right now currently with the lean startup model, and for small business owners, being really agile is about the only advantage that we have over large existing companies. So working in these quick iterations, working in these cycles that really break down our projects is a fantastic way to use that agile methodology. If you only do planning once a quarter, you may find yourself really off track with your business, right? If you say, okay, this is my sales goal and I'm gonna drive to that, and no matter what happens, that's what I'm gonna do, and you don't reevaluate that for a whole quarter, that can be pretty detrimental to a small business owner, right? We really need to be checking in more consistently, and our cycle really provides these excellent points for us to do it every single month. Some comments, the cycling is so important to talk about. I struggle with the daily habits and consistency throughout the month, and I wonder if that's why. I definitely found that to be true for myself, Emily. When I was, not taking this into account, sometimes things would feel easier and then they'd feel more difficult. So not taking the cycle into account really led to me feeling inconsistent. So I would really be curious for you to check in about that. And Kendra, or do you ever, or whatever you can do to not have a period in your life. Yay, moons. Exactly. So if your period's gone forever, you can definitely still use this information through the moon cycles. So I'm just going to kind of do a little bit of a deeper dive on each of the phases. So the first phase of the cycle, again, is the menstruation phase. This lasts, between typically at least 3 days, but between that day 1 and day 7. So this is the beginning phase of your cycle and the time where you're bleeding, or if you do not have a period, this will be the time around the new moon where it is dark in the sky. You may feel some discomfort, you may feel tired or drained. You may also feel more introverted and creative. You can also have that heightened sense of intuition and feel more connected to that which is greater. Great time to connect and have our faith muscles be building right now when there's a lot up in the air. Great time to connect to that which is greater. Something that's interesting that we found is that one of the reasons there can be that extreme pain for people is when they are not honoring this phase and not giving themselves permission to slow down a little bit. When our body isn't getting what it really needs and we're pushing through all the time, it can lead to some heightened health issues and problems because it's really asking for our collaboration. And so we found that when we are honoring this phase, really reduced amounts of period cramps and pain. I found that to be true for myself. I have almost completely painless periods at this point, which is something I never thought I would experience in my entire life. I had horrible periods before I went on birth control. But actually, since adopting this framework and really giving myself permission to slow down for a couple of days, the pain is almost non-existent. So that's been fantastic. Taylor, I could not even imagine painless periods. Yeah, it's something that we've been so conditioned to think that pain is around menstruation is normal. That's another one of those head scratchers. Like if there was a different condition that all men experience that caused excruciating pain every single month, we would say, oh, we need to fix this. Like this is something that shouldn't be going on. This is unacceptable. Except for the fact that with women, we've been fed this line of BS that, oh, this is just how it should be, or this is how life is. So just suck it up, buttercup. But I believe that that is not good enough and that we deserve something better than that. So definitely something to kind of check in with. And Taylor, I'd love to, we can definitely chat later if you want some support around that. Rena, clearly we can handle it, right? Yeah, the short end of the stick seems the thing we have to handle quite a bit. Awesome. So the follicular phase, this is where your ovaries prepare an egg for ovulation. This can really feel that boost in energy. Estrogen comes back on board to full swing. You may also have that rise in testosterone. So you may feel that increase of extroversion, feel more positive and happy, and you may also feel really confident. So it's a great time for external activities like meetings, networking, job interviews, things of that nature. A word to the wise here is sometimes we can really jump straight from that menstrual energy like into a high level of energy in the follicular phase. And I have found that I can sometimes burn myself out because I'm like, okay, energy is back. Let's do all of the things right now. Let me have 20 meetings with people, and then I like crash out the next day. So really giving yourself that permission to kind of ease back into it. There's not a hard or firm cutoff for any of these, and you're going to learn a lot more when you do your own tracking over time. But that's something that I found for me. It's also the reason that we have people do their planning during menstruation instead of during the follicular phase. I used to do my planning unintentionally during the follicular phase, and I would get so excited and wound up that I would double book people or triple book people like into the same slot on my calendar, or plan way too many activities for like a few weeks down the road. And so I wouldn't always make the best planning decisions for myself when the energy is at a really high level. And so that's why we encourage doing that planning time during the menstrual phase. Ovulation is the phase when the egg is released into the fallopian tube, but there's also kind of a little bit of a buffer. So this can be between 3 to 5 days where there is this fertile quality cervical mucus that would allow conception to happen. So just trying to think of, if you are naturally cycling and you don't want to be pregnant, really kind of understanding it's not just one day when you could get pregnant, there's this kind of little batch around it. But because of this, we really can have this peak of our energy. It can feel very much like a summer energy. We may feel very warm and inviting. Clients that we work with often say that this feels like the easiest time for them to be in mom mode because they're good at taking care of other people, and it feels really easy. It can also be the thing that leads to them feeling so jarred and disconnected when they go back into the luteal phase and they don't understand why they don't feel so lovey-dovey to their children as they did a few days before. So really that understanding of these fluctuations gives a lot of freedom and permission. So there's going to be that peak energy. And if you are typically an introverted person, this could even feel overwhelming for you. This is something I was not anticipating. I am a 100% extrovert and I love ovulation energy. But some of our clients said that they felt really disconnected because their bodies were really pushing them to go and chat with everybody, but it wasn't really something they felt like was their most comfortable or easy to do task. So it's interesting that there's not a one size fits all to this, because even if we've got the same hormones that are going on, they all really interplay with our own personalities and our own brain chemistry. So it's pretty cool. But you may feel like this is the easiest time to be communicating and really receive what you want. So again, if you are non-cycling, this would be around the full moon. We also notice there's lots of weird stuff that happens around the full moon, and it's likely because most of the women are could get pregnant. So if you've ever talked to someone who works in an ER or is a teacher, they talk about how there is craziness and people wilding out during the full moon, particularly their male students. And I think there's a correlation. I haven't seen any data pointing to those two pieces, but I would say there's enough there to kind of get curious about. Then the last phase of this cycle is the luteal phase. So this is the phase when your body releases progesterone to support a possible pregnancy. What's really interesting is that when the egg comes out, what is left behind is called the corpus luteum. I think this is so cool. So it's this little tiny sac that becomes fully vascularized within 24 hours. It is the only system in the body that does that within 24 hours. So it creates its own blood supply by attaching to a chunk of the fallopian tube, and it starts to create the hormone progesterone. It is so freaking miraculous. Our bodies are so cool. Because of this, during the luteal phase, we may feel a little bit more tired and drained, and we may feel more sensitive and doubting. We could also have some of those mood swings or pain coming up, especially as we get closer to the menstrual phase again. but we may also have an easier time connecting to nature, going within, and doing some of those tedious or detail-oriented tasks like decluttering, filing, and organizing. It's a great time to go through your emails and clear out what you no longer have use for. A great time to clear out your office. A great time to clear out annoying people on Facebook. I mean, it's just a great time to do to clear out what is no longer serving you during this time. And we have found that people can be less critical of themselves when they're using this energy in this way. It can be a nitpicky energy if we're not sure how to redirect it. But when we're really giving it a good task to do, it becomes much easier to work with. Again, the luteal phase is the longest phase of the cycle. So it's really a great practice to get into love and joy with this phase of the cycle. For me personally, it was the most challenging phase for myself. So yeah, Kendra. Oh, just a wave. Okay. Oh, for you, it was the most challenging phase. Is that what you're saying? Oh, okay. But I definitely found this to be challenging because it was a more introverted time. It didn't feel like I don't feel bubbly during this time. So it's really a great practice in how do we learn how to make space for each of these different parts of ourselves. I think often we really exalt women when they are in the ovulation energy, when they smile a lot, when they're kind, when they're good at taking care of other people. We really can get put in that box. And so I think that's partially why this is such a challenging time for people, is to really understand that it's okay to not be like that all of the time. And in fact, we'd get really burnt out if we were constantly living in that energy. And when we do force ourselves to be in that energy all the time, it can be very, very draining. So you may be curious, like, what happens if I am trying to do my scheduling, but it doesn't work? Like I can't line up with the different tasks of my cycle. So we just acknowledge that we cannot always bend the world to fit our menstrual cycle yet, especially when we're really oriented around the 24-hour clock. Maybe someday when we, really help take over the world, then it'll be more possible. But for now, really just giving yourself permission that there are going to be things that don't match up. Start to understand and notice different self-care pieces that resonate during each phase and making sure you do more of them. So if you are in a phase mismatch, add in additional self-care. Really being cognizant of that can be super duper helpful. Kendra, no, I'm in the luteal phase and I'll be quarantined for next week. That's probably good. That probably feels good to be quarantined during the luteal phase. I've been quarantined during my luteal phase so far, and I think it is probably not a bad thing. So give me lots of time to be self-reflective. Patience, cycle awareness is a really different way to relate to yourself and business. So it may take a few cycles to work out the kinks. So I'm curious, do any of you, before, if you haven't heard me talk or haven't heard about the agenda, have you heard about bringing cycle awareness to your life and business? Because for me, it was a total paradigm shift. So it definitely took a few months to really get into learning. Ashley, never heard of it. Yeah. Right. So this is something this is our biological programming that has been going on our entire lives, and it's something that we're not taught about. So it may take a while to readjust to this new way of thinking. Emily, I'm in the luteal phase and I am supposed to be doing work right now, communicating. I wish I could take a break. Yeah. So hopefully there's a way to build in. I love that you came to this chat to give yourself some spaciousness and an opportunity not to have to talk. So really continuing to support yourself and build those things in. And Taylor said, I had never thought about it until I met you. Yeah, I had hardly ever thought about it until I started working on this project, because it's just not an orientation that we are gifted with, unfortunately. Oh, she said she's in the follicular phase and doing all of the Zoom meetings. Yeah, getting that connection even while in quarantine. I love it. The other thing that you can do if you feel out of sync is starting to plan for next time. So if you try out an activity and it doesn't work out well, plan it for next time. Just say, okay, next time during the luteal phase, I don't want to do that many meetings, and I'm going to block off my schedule, and I'm going to start actually looking how I can take care of myself and plan for the future. And so those are definitely some things that you can do if you feel like you're in a mismatch, or if you feel like something is really calling you to be outside of the phase that you're in. So I'm curious, I would love for you guys to think about it, and maybe we can even have a discussion, but what could this do for your business or your life if you started to shift your orientation in this way? And you know, took some time to actually start to do this kind of planning for yourself. What might open up if you started to take some of these shifts? This could be helpful with dissertation work. Yeah, knowing when to research versus when to write, instead of trying to do it a little bit all the time, really like looking up batches, definitely more productivity. Emily, I definitely want to do some talk out loud, so we'll get there to a minute and just kind of maybe do some brainstorming together. That would be awesome. And just how this has kind of had related to some of our clients of how this has worked is one of them said, you know, she really enjoyed sales conversations happening during ovulation. They feel like they go so much more easily. I feel like I have also sitting down and carving out time during my period to do the planning. Love the intentionality. It's my first month's tracking with my menstrual phase, and I'm certainly easily recognize what phase I'm in and don't feel so much pressure to do things that might contradict where I'm at. So these are just some really cool things that people have been noticing when they apply this work. So, you know, we've talked a lot about how you can apply these tools, what you can bring to your own business. And we've actually created a planner right now to help people get into this system. This is the thing that I was looking for, was how to plan these things out intentionally. And so if this is something that you're interested in getting started, oh, I love Kendra's agenda popping up there. Yeah. And we've got some other people who on the call who are using it, but you know, this is a tool that we've already got put together for you, both in PDF and hard copy. And so it can really be a great partnership for you to start to make these shifts in your own life and business. So we'll definitely unmute now, and then maybe we'll talk about how could this be effective, and if there are any other questions, we can definitely take some time for those. So we'll just maybe open it up.
Thank you for doing this. I think that the biggest takeaway I've had from listening to you talk is the ability to understand what these phases are. I never even heard half of these words before, or I'd hear them and not understand what they were. And I'm sorry I was waving earlier. I was waving at Maddie. Hi, Maddie.
She's so cute.
So adorable. Hi, Maddie. But I think just understanding, and then as women, when we understand how our bodies are reacting, like you can say to yourself, oh, I'm in this phase right now. No wonder I'm so extra, or no wonder I am so exhausted, or no wonder I'm so crabby, and you can kind of adjust. I mean, when you understand why you feel the way that you do, and you understand it's hormonal, you're way less likely to like eat your husband or your children for lunch or somehow be terrible to them, you know? So I think that's been really helpful for me. And then, you know, as a mom of teens that will be starting menstrual cycles very soon, I think, wow, this will be really helpful to be able to teach them and to understand, like, okay, I can give some grace here because I know what phase she's in right now.
Definitely. It just gives this grounding point, because people have made the comment like, well, if I expect myself to feel like that, won't it like maybe mess with my head and make me feel more like that? And that isn't really what we've experienced with ourselves or with our users. It's actually just like a check-in point, or like becomes a little bit of a flag, like, oh, like this may be more common during this time. And so it gives me a great opportunity to step back if I am feeling extra sensitive, or do some of those self-care tasks. And it really just creates this amazing, amazing container for self-understanding and compassion. Taylor asks, is the agenda based on a monthly calendar, or do you start the month calendar on the first day of menstruation? Yep, you start on the first day of your menstruation, so it's all undated, so it's based around your cycle, Taylor. I always tell people that my head is in my uterus. I laugh at myself when I really can't think correctly. Yeah, it may not even be that untrue. I love that. Self-acceptance is key to moving forward. Absolutely. Absolutely. So I posed that question earlier. How might this impact your life or business right now? So if anyone wants to share out loud, be happy to take some time to do that, or we can open it up for questions. So if anyone wants more information, unmute yourself. Looks like Ashley did. I'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, so I was just thinking, because I'm a leadership coach and doing one-on-one coaching and group sessions, it would probably be better, like I was just thinking I'm moving into the luteal phase, and I'm like, that would be why I'm like, oh, tomorrow, do I really want to have this coaching call or this coaching conversation, you know, because you have to get in the mindset of it. And like, I love doing it. And once I'm there, it's fine. But sometimes it's that like almost like a sense of dread, but it makes sense because my mood is shifting, but I don't typically recognize those things until after the fact, like, oh yeah, that's why.
Yeah. So we've seen people kind of approach that two ways, either really changing their scheduling and like, okay, I'm not going to put that kind of stuff there because it doesn't feel the best. I'm going to do other things instead. And, you know, you can lead with a transparent leadership style if you want, or not. You just like, here are the times I have available. Here are times that are not available. So that's kind of an option there. Or just understanding, okay, maybe I need to do some extra meditation before I go into this session right now because I don't feel like connecting to people. But just that awareness that you may feel like that really gives that permission. So either of those can be a great strategy.
Yeah, and I think that's helpful just because I'm an extreme extrovert also. So I get really upset with myself when I don't feel like I want to connect with people because I'm like, no, that's what you do. That's what you need. And so not being able to build on that is challenging.
Definitely. I used to be like, what's wrong with me right now? Like, why do I hate everyone? Oh, it's fine. It's just my hormones. It's great. Yeah. Awesome. Does anyone have any other questions or comments? Yeah, Emily, what's up?
So when I'm in a really male-dominated, overworked industry, how do you stand up for yourself and say, hey, I know that it's typical for salaried employees in this field to work 60 hours a week, but I only feel up to working 6 or 8. I'll work the 60, well, actually, for me, it's closer to 50, not 60, when I'm feeling more energized. Because right now, it's a busy time for us, and while I understand that there are some weeks when I have more meetings, during pain points at work, you're expected to work more, even if that's not when it syncs up to you. How do you stand up to, especially the male-dominated, you should be able to work 60 hours a week, no matter what mindset?
That's kind of a hard question. This is
Yeah.
like an entire question about culture and the way that we
Yeah.
look at work and the way we think about these kind of things. So it depends on how comfortable you feel. There could be some transparency. There could be some opportunity for transparency and start to push back against different conversations. Or you can just block your schedule off and say you're doing other kinds of work. You know, some people are worried about the stigma or shame around that kind of honesty right now. And I totally understand that. And so how can you advocate for yourself in other ways? Can you block off your calendar and let people know, well, I'm doing research right now, so I don't have time for this meeting. I'll schedule you next week. You know, there are some creative ways that we can start to stand up for ourselves. And we are, I think, seeing that this overworked, underpaid model is not a great model on the entire planet. And so some stuff is going to have to change. So we may be really on the cusp of seeing some of these shifts anyway.
You know, it's interesting that you bring that up because I feel like, you know, I'm in my 40s and right at the end of the Gen Xers. And so I, you know, watching what millennials have done for our workforce, which is like, I find incredibly important. I always say, like, we can thank them for a lot more than avocado toast, because the big thing that millennials have given us is like how important culture is. Not every company has embraced it. So like if your company has not embraced that yet, that's a tough conversation to have. If they've not embraced like people working when they are, you know, when they feel more up to it. Some people are night owls, some people, you know, all of that stuff. And some companies, some business has to run on a 12-hour schedule. There's just no other way. But I think it's interesting to see what will come of our workforce. It's so different than Bark and Martyr when I started working, where you like literally were just told to shut your mouth and sit down, shut up, do your work, and make as little noise as possible. And now it's like encouraged to make some noise. So I think these conversations are getting easier to have. And, you know, now as women are taking over the world, which is freaking great. I'm here for it. I think that the conversations will start to get easier, but we're still on like the front lines of those conversations. They're scary. They really are. It's good point to bring up.
They are definitely scary. And the thing that is, if we look at any change that has been uncomfortable, it only happened when people in their small way, whatever made sense for them, started to push back against that. Otherwise, we wouldn't have been to these points of these kind of changes, you know, over the last 100 years, even, it takes us showing up and starting to advocate and ask for different things when we can, where it's possible. And I believe that within my lifetime, we'll see that shift of period informed workplaces, people taking all kinds of biology into account, because really, if we're looking at as business owners, it affects the bottom line when people, they're like, well, just show up anyway. You're like, well, okay, cool. I'll sit here and push my papers around. And I know I'm not productive in the same way, but I could do other kind of tasks that would be fantastic. Right. So I truly believe we'll be able to start to see and demand those kind of shifts over time, because it does affect the bottom line.
One thing you educated me on that I didn't know, you're like, well, men have hormonal shifts too. It's just very different because the way testosterone flows is more predictable and it's just different. So it's also good to understand that men are like, they're not, they aren't the way they are because they're just complete jerks. Like a lot of, and we aren't the way we are because we're complete basket cases or whatever you want to throw, whatever sprinkle of that you want to throw on it. But that they, that, you know, they're dealing with their own shifts, and it'd be nice to rise and fall as the sun rises and sets, wouldn't it?
Yeah, so they have this consistency, and I think, you know, on the other side of that, we bring this creativity because we're moving in a rhythmic pattern. And so really what would be great for the world is having both centered and space for all of it, because there are some great things about being that consistent day in and day out, and there are some other great things of like how I shift the way I see problems depending on where I'm at in my cycle, and how my skills and gifts shift a little bit. And that's also really cool. You know, my husband may still see the same problem the same way for 30 days in a row. And so it can be kind of nice to add this variety to it. And with both, when we can ground into both of them, we create like this system. So I really have hope that eventually we'll be able to advocate for that planet-wide.
Yeah, because we are really clear sometimes, and like ideas like just come out of nowhere all the time. Yeah. It's great. Well, if no one else has any questions, but I want to say that you are available to connect with personally, and you're open to that on Facebook.
Yes.
I know that's the truth. So, but I just want people to know if you want to have a private conversation, Alyx is great about that. But you also have a group. Is that open for people to join?
Yes, it's called the Cycle Reintroduction Group. I will type how it is in the chat, and we just go over a whole bunch of cycle information, like how to eat for the cycle, supplements for the cycle. And it's just a fantastic space to gather. And right now we've got a really cool offering going on. So if anyone buys either a PDF or a physical planner, whichever one, we're offering a 30-minute coaching session to really talk through for free. If you buy one of those two, like how would this apply to you specifically? How could we get this working for your life and business right now? We've never offered that before, but with so many people at home, we wanted to create an additional layer of support around everybody. And so if you buy one of those tools right now, you'll also get the opportunity to have a free 30-minute coaching session. Human connection plus amazing business insights for yourself. So we're really excited.
That is awesome. And that's and your planner is beautiful. It's really well done. It's easy to follow. It also, I put it back in the drawer, but it also has information about what each of these cycles are. So, you know, when you wake up and you're in a luteal phase and you're like, what the hell is going on? You can like look at that information and have it right in front of you. And I know the group has some great interaction with people that are really using the tools. My sister, who is on right now, is one of them. She is like always talking to me about things that she's learning in that group. So I would really recommend joining the group to just get in the conversation with other people and learn what they're doing and how they're planning their business. But being in direct sales, I really working with literally thousands of women across the globe. Like, to me, this has such amazing potential to really change the way that we work together. And if nothing else, you know, as a whole, we can look at the moon and say, okay, like, let's plan our higher like energy events during this time of the month, and let's plan, do our planning during this time. And it's like game changer, truly. So thank you.
You're welcome. I think has made it easier for me to work with other women because there's all these clashes when we're not understanding ourselves. And just like you were talking about with your daughters, when we're really internalizing that understanding, it makes it easier to understand those bumps that we may have with other women. We may get a bad rap at like being in groups of community, at working together. And so we really get to start shifting this by deeper peace and understanding for ourselves. It's so much easier to connect with all the other amazing women in the world. We need this more than ever. So thank you so much, Kendra.
Yeah, well, thank you. So we can let everybody go. I will be putting the recording of this on YouTube later today. It takes a little while for that process to happen, but I'll be putting it on YouTube so people can watch the replay. And yeah, I hope it helps a lot. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everybody.
See you later. Leave. Oh, I think I have to take control back from you. Hold on. Maybe people have to leave. Bye, Jolene. Jolene.